Hold on, I gotta tweet some basic positive propaganda about the opposition party so my party will win in the next election. Yeah, because that's gonna work. If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense. Nothing would be what it is, because everything would be what it isn't. And contrariwise, what it is, it wouldn't be. And what it wouldn't be, it would. You see? That was spoken by Alice. And also probably by Jack Dorsey. If a modern-day Alice found her way into Wonderland, I'm pretty sure she'd look around and see crazy cats and entitled people who do nothing but party and Tweedledee fighting Tweedledum, and once she wrapped her mind around the absurdity and the madness of it all, she'd be like, OMG, this place is totally Twitter. Back in March, Salon.com put out an online article titled, Exposure to Opposing Views on Twitter Might Actually Increase Polarization, study. As much as I'm disinterested in study, I read it anyway. The researchers from Duke, Princeton, and NYU were investigating whether or not Twitter creates a political echo chamber environment. The article summed up their findings by saying, any attempt to reason with a conservative on Twitter is only going to make that person more conservative, and likely vice versa with a liberal, though perhaps to a lesser extent. That's just the journalistic way of saying that people on the right had a statistically significant shift to the right, whereas people on the left, it was much smaller. Smaller as in not statistically significant. Essentially, by trying to bridge the gap and persuade people on Twitter that they're going in the wrong direction, you're just encouraging them further down their path. Down the other path. Down their current path. You know, whichever path they happen to be on already. Which is probably not the way you want them to go. Which seems to indicate that when it comes to tweeting about politics, it doesn't matter which way you go. It's like madness. Would you care for some tea? The write-up concludes with, in other words, don't waste your time arguing on Twitter. Which is probably the first thing that actually makes sense. If these findings are correct, then politicking on Twitter or really any other social media is probably a lose-lose proposition. So stop tweeting about it. Not because they don't care what you think, but because you're really, swinging for the wrong team. What is it? Batting for the wrong team? Something about the wrong team. Oh, what is that sports metaphor? You're doing something for the wrong team. You should probably quit posting about politics because you're tweeting for the wrong team. Yeah. What? Does this mean I can't have a nuanced debate or clearly express complex ideas or discuss different positions or propose meaningful solutions to problems in 280 characters or fewer? Yeah, it might mean that. Can you do all of those things on Twitter? Of course you can, as long as you're only addressing people who already agree with you. And anyone who doesn't agree with you, well, punch a Nazi or off with their heads, whatever the week's anti-oppositional violence inciting catchphrase happens to be. Just do that, because that makes sense. Is this really where we want to be? The researchers were careful to point out that their study only covers Twitter users, and is not necessarily a good representation of the entire US population. Thank goodness. We're not all Twitter users. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But if you're like me, the more you think about it, and the more you look around, and the more divisive voices you hear, the more it seems like the bizarre, backward nature of Wonderland is invading everyday public and private discourse. And not just in politics. It's everywhere. Perhaps we've all fallen down the rabbit hole. Perhaps the idea of being woke or red-pilled is indicative that behind the facade of madness, there's something much deeper going wrong. Or perhaps it's all just nonsense. Tea? Now I need you all to go out and post on Twitter how much you hate this show. Really, seriously. Let's see what happens. Maybe the article should have been titled, Conservative Extremes Are Solidifying Over Liberal Ones in Everybody Loses Political Polarization Poop Storm on Twitter, : blockage. Yeah, that fits.